Thank you.
What clock do I go by? The one that's, right? Okay. It's just about that. Not on driving.
I call to order the City of Riverbank regular City Council and Local Redevelopment Authority Board meetings, hybrid meetings. Today is Tuesday, November 9th, 2021, and it is 6 p.m. This meeting will be held in accordance with the California Government Code Section 59453, Subdivision E of Ralph M. Brown Act, California, Government Code 54950 et sec. The Federal Americans with Disability Act, the recent Stanislaus County Health Officers Mandatory Face Covering Order, September 2nd, 2021. While this meeting will be physically open to the public, given the state of the emergency regarding the threat of COVID-19, members of the public may also participate and comment via the Zoom virtual platform. Refer to the last page of the agenda for participation information. Please rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing.
Let us pray. Father, Lord, we just thank you, first of all, for this great city of Riverbank. Lord, we thank you for Mayor O'Brien and this great city council who represent us, Lord, as they sit here this evening conducting business. Lord, I just pray, Father, that, Lord, as each item comes forth, that, Lord, the wisdom that they have been given, God, to what's best for Riverbank would be displayed through them, and that we as a community, Lord, would support them and believe that, God, when it's all said and done, even though we may have some differences, that, Lord, we would agree together to do our part in making Riverbank a better place to live. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Please be seated. Roll call, please.
Council Authority Member District 2, Rachel Hernandez. Here. Council Authority Member District 3, Cal Campbell.
Here.
Council Authority Member District 4, Darlene Barber Martinez. Here. Vice Mayor Chair Luis Uribe.
Here.
Mayor Chair Richard D. O'Brien.
Here. There'll be no changes to the agenda. Conflict of interest. Any council authority member or staff who has a direct conflict of interest on any scheduled agenda item to be considered is to declare their conflict at this time. Seeing none, we'll move on to public comment. At this time, members of the public may comment on any item not appearing on the agenda and within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council LRA Board. Individual comments are limited to a maximum of 3 minutes, and time cannot be yielded to another person. Under state law, matters presented during the public comment period cannot be discussed or acted upon. Refer to the last page of this agenda for public comment procedures. Are there any public comments? Do we have any public comments from the Zoom?
Mayor, there is no one wishing to speak, and we did not receive any written comments.
Thank you. Move on to the consent calendar. It consists of item 8.1, waived readings. Item 8.2, a resolution approving the city manager and or her designee as signature authority for the 2021 California Budget Act funding allocation of $2 million from the State of California General Fund. Item 8.3, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Riverbank, California, proclaiming a local emergency and authorizing remote teleconference meetings of the legislative bodies of the City of Riverbank pursuant to Assembly Bill 361 and Brown Act provision. Is there any discussion on the consent calendar? Do we have anyone from the public wishing to discuss the consent item?
There is no one wishing to speak.
I bring it back to the council for consideration.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
A second?
We have a motion by the Vice Mayor and second by Councilmember Barbara Martinez. Roll call, please.
Council members Barbara Martinez,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Hernandez. Yes. Vice Mayor Uribe,
Yes.
Mayor O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Item 9.1 is under public hearings. First reading by title only and introduction of a proposed ordinance amending Title 15 land usage by repealing in their entirety Section 153.003 definitions and Sections 153.325 excess. Did we get through the consent calendar?
No. The audio was not lost, just the video.
Okay.
You're back on.
I do not need to do the vote again? No. Okay. All right. Public hearings, item 9.1, first reading by title only and introduction of a proposed ordinance amending Title 15 land usage by repealing in their entirety Section 153.003 definitions and Section 153.325 accessory dwelling units and substituting them with a new Section 153.003 and 153.325 and adding new Section 153.326 through 153.330.
Thank you very much, Mayor. This is an item that we've been working on quite a long time and is funded through the SB2 grant that we were fortunate enough to get. And so Donna's been working on it, and we have contracted with J.B. Anderson Land Use Planning to do this code update for us, and Mr. Niskanen is going to give a report this evening.
Thank you, Sean. David Niskanen, J.B. Anderson Land Use Planning. We bring forth to you today zoning ordinance amendment 01-2021. And before I get into my presentation, I just wanted to make part of the public record. The notice that was published in the newspaper included repealing and replacing sections of the municipal code, but it also needed to include that we're adding sections to the municipal code as it relates to accessory dwelling units. So I just wanted to make sure that was discussed before I got into the presentation. Just to give a little summary, the zoning ordinance amendment is a staff-initiated proposal to update the Riverbank Municipal Code to be consistent with new state laws as it relates to accessory dwelling units. The zoning ordinance amendment would cover primarily two areas of the municipal code. First would be repealing section 153.003, the definition section, and substituting it with a new section to add definitions related to state laws such as junior accessory dwelling unit, efficiency kitchen, efficiency unit, and tandem parking. And then the ordinance amendment would also repeal section 153.325, which is the existing accessory dwelling unit section, and replace it with a new section, as well as add the additional sections to be consistent with state law. And that would include new provisions for the creation of junior accessory dwelling units, which are accessory dwelling units that are created within the home or converting a bedroom, as well as provisions for attached and detached accessory dwelling units or in other words, commonly known as secondary units or granting flats. Just to give a little background on this item, on October 24th, 2017, Council passed an ordinance amending the Municipal Code to regulate accessory dwelling units. These amendments were enacted to comply with state legislation that was in effect at that time. State has since then passed a number of housing bills related to accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units in 2016, 2017, and 2020. Most recently, state law that became effective in January 1st, 2020 and January 1st, 2021 modified the California Government Code quite extensively on accessory dwelling units as it relates to reducing setbacks, the number that can be allowed in single family, as well as allowing accessory dwelling units in multifamily settings. And this work, as Sean mentioned, is done through the Senate Bill 2 funds, which also includes preparing ADU building permit plans, which are in draft form at the moment. And I'm not sure if Donna has presented those to you yet, but they are forthcoming. As I discussed earlier, the section for definitions is being updated to include definitions as it relates to state law. One is junior accessory dwelling unit, which as discussed is a ADU, which is contained within the home, and it's the maximum square footage is 500 square feet. And then other definitions such as efficiency unit, public transit, tandem parking, and efficiency kitchen. And then really where the meat and potatoes are for this amendment is within the accessory dwelling unit section, which is 153325. First, what we did was we clarified where ADUs and junior ADUs are permitted, and to allow the construction of ADUs on lots developed with existing multifamily consistent with state law. We also include provisions to allow a single property with an existing or proposed primary dwelling, a single-family home, to have an ADU attached or detached and a junior accessory dwelling unit if certain conditions are met, and those conditions are related to the zoning in which the property is located in. Then we also reorganize the development standards so they're a little bit easier to read, and then we also separate the standards out for accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units. Those standards include limiting the size of a junior ADU to 500 square feet, requiring an independent exterior entrance, and at least an efficiency kitchen, which is a kind of like a kitchenette. And then also require a property to record a deed restriction on a junior accessory dwelling unit. So the junior accessory dwelling unit cannot be sold independently of the main dwelling because it's all contained in one structure. And we also reduce the existing setback that's in the code from 5 feet to 4 feet for accessory dwelling units. And then we also clarify that no setback is required for an existing space or accessory structure that's converted. And then we also add a utilities and impact fee sections to clarify how the city handles connection to the water and sewer system, as well as the impact fee provisions as it relates to state law. Oh, guess this wasn't working that time. Okay, thank you. I'm going to go a few slides. I think I skipped a couple. I'm on slide number 12, Annabelle. Yeah. Perfect. And then we also added that an ADU and a junior ADU may be rented separately from the primary residence, but they may not be sold or conveyed otherwise. And then we also included that no owner occupancy requirement is allowed, and that's a state law that sunsets in January 1st, 2025. Next slide, please. Yeah, that's correct. And then we added a provision that manufactured housing is permitted as an ADU only if they're installed on a permanent foundation and are at least 10 years or newer. And then one of the questions that always comes up with ADUs is whether or not a recreational vehicle can be counted as an ADU. And we made sure that there's specific language that recreational vehicles, including motorhomes, travel trailers, tent trailers, fifth wheel trailers, do not qualify as an ADU. So it's really targeting the manufactured housing for ADU. Next slide, please. Planning Commission conducted a workshop on September 21st, 2021, which we discussed the updated state law as well as the proposed amendments to the Riverbank Municipal Code. And then on October 19th, Planning Commission held a public hearing on the ordinance that's in front of you tonight and voted 5-0 recommending approval. As it relates to CEQA, we're asking council to find that the project is exempt via the common sense exemption. That CEQA only applies to projects that have a potential for causing a direct or indirect physical change in the environment. We're just adopting provisions consistent with state law as it relates to accessory dwelling units. And then our recommendation tonight is to conduct the public hearing as well as adopt the proposed ordinance, repealing sections 153 and 153.003 and 153.325 and substituting new sections for those, as well as adding sections 153.326 through 153.330. And I'm available to answer any questions, as well as John and Donna are in the audience. Thank you.
Are there any questions from the council? Okay, thank you very much. We'll open public hearing. Public hearing is open. Are there anyone wishing to speak on this matter?
There is no one wishing to speak on Zoom, and we did not receive any written comments on this.
Thank you very much. I now close public hearing. I bring it back to the council for consideration of item 9.1, first reading by title only and introduction of a proposed ordinance amending Title 15.
I'll second it.
A motion to approve by Councilmember Barbara Martinez and a second by Councilmember Campbell. Roll call, please.
Councilmembers Barbara Martinez.
Yes.
Campbell.
Yes.
Hernandez. Yes. Vice Mayor Uribe.
Yes.
Mayor O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, gentlemen. Item 10, workshops. Item 10.1, workshop, ag mitigation strategy.
Thank you very much, Mayor. As the presentation gets pulled up, what I'll share with you is that we have, as you know, been in the process of seeing the first couple subdivisions of Crossroads West start to kick off, and one of the action items that's been on our list for some time is to come up with a strategy as it relates to how we'd like to make sure that our obligation as far as ag mitigation is concerned is sufficient and in line with Policy 22 that LAFCO has adopted. So you can go to the next slide. Just a little history. This policy was originally adopted by LAFCO in September of 2012 and then amended recently in March of 2019. There are 4 key goals identified, and those are to guide development away from agricultural lands where possible and encourage efficient development of existing vacant lands and infill properties within an agency's boundaries prior to conversion of additional agricultural lands. Second is to fully consider the impacts a proposal will have on existing agricultural lands. Third is to minimize the conversion of agricultural lands and other uses. And fourth is to promote preservation of agricultural lands and continued agricultural uses while balancing the need for planned orderly development. And then the policy also requires each jurisdiction to plan for that preservation of ag as part of their land use planning processes. We can go next one. The strategies that are included are to the removal of agricultural land from existing sphere. Basically, there were a number of strategies that were laid out, but here are some. 2 is an adopted policy or condition requiring mitigation at a ratio of 1 to 1, and that is for residential only. It does not include commercial or industrial growth. And the third, which that should say number 3, is a voter-approved urban growth boundary. So if your community approves a voter-approved urban growth boundary, they're not subject to the other components of ag mitigation. And one example of that is in Newman, passed a voter-initiated urban growth boundary in that community. As I mentioned, Crossroads West is subject to ag mitigation under Policy 22. It was identified as a mitigation strategy in the environmental impact report and was discussed at LAFCO. The developers chose and preferred option 2 from the previous slide, which is in lieu fees designed to mitigate at a 1-to-1 ratio. And based on our conversations with Sarah at LAFCO, the executive director, we are one of the first projects within the county actually to implement a strategy, although there are a number of projects that are subject to it. We've consulted with her a number of times as to making sure that we're going about this the correct way. So there are 3 primary options for administration of a fee program. What we've seen in some communities is the developers work directly with the Central Valley Farmland Trust and provide verification to the city. The second is the city council adopts a fee and collects fees to acquire agricultural preservation easements. We've actually, the mayor and I went and met with Charlotte Mitchell at the Central Valley Farmland Trust and discussed different ways that she's seen it done throughout the valley. And we're surprised to hear that some communities actually collect those fees, place them into accounts, and then go out and actively seek for preservation easements. From staff perspective, that seems like an awful heavy lift for an organization of our size and probably presents some practical challenges as well. The third is that the city council adopt a fee, collects the fee, and submits those funds to the Central Valley Farmland Trust, and we would work out some kind of MOU with them about how that works. Multiple components that have to be evaluated when you're trying to come up with a fee. Market rate of prime soil, the story rating. And in case you don't know what the story rating is, or there's members of the public that don't know, it's essentially a method that was established many years ago that basically takes into account 4 components: soil depth and texture, soil permeability, soil chemical characteristics, and drainage and surface runoff. So those 4 components are calculated into a rating criteria that comes up with, at the highest level, 100, which would be prime soil, best possible soil, and there down. And we'll go into that here in a minute. There's a calculation, which I'm going to show you in a second, of a composite analysis when you're talking about a whole area of, especially a master planned area like Crossroads West, where the prime soil areas do not necessarily go along parcel boundaries, and so you have to come up with a way to capture prime versus all of the other subgrades below that. And then calculation of that price factor of those various story rating levels. And then a blended approach is what we will recommend to master planned areas with a variety of soil types. So this is kind of hard to see, but it is in, I'll be providing it in detail when we actually have the full analysis done. But what you can see on the spreadsheet is we took essentially, item 1 says mitigation price for prime soil with a story rating of 80 to 100, which would be grade 1 or 2, would be valued at approximately $10,000 an acre. We've gotten that number based on a couple of other local jurisdictions that have valued the land at approximately $10,000 an acre for prime. And what we did from there down was essentially applied a discount factor for every grade below that down to 0. Now, just so I can explain the spreadsheet, the column that you see on the bottom that says total soil area, and it totals out to 172.8, that's not the total acreage of Crossroads West. The total acreage of Crossroads West is 261 acres, roughly. That does not include, in our calculation, Westgate, formerly Crawford Road. It doesn't include Morrell. It doesn't include areas that were not, that, you know, for example, had a large building on it that were not in ag production. it includes those areas that we're actively engaged in ag. And what we've done is we've taken, you can see that there's roughly 50 acres of the project area that is at a story rating above 80, 90, and 95. So those factors are added in at 100%. Below that, the third column down, there is 96 acres of story rating 68 land, and if you apply 80% reduction factor, that brings the total soil area of what you would consider prime to 76.8, and so on for the last one. The very last column, the total amount of acreage that reaches a story rating of 30 is about 115 acres, and so if you apply the 40% discount factor, you come up with 46 acres. So of the total project area, 261 acres, we calculate the equivalent area of prime soil is approximately 172.8 acres. At $10,000 an acre, our calculations are that that's approximately, well, it's not approximately, it's $1.728 million. And so what we've done, there's really two ways you could do it. You could do it based on a land perspective, where when a map comes in, you have a blended rate and you evaluate how large the acreage is of that subdivision and assess a fee at the beginning. However, you may recall that LAFCO was requested and granted that developers could pay this fee at time of building permit. And so we think that it's much more practical to assess a per unit fee based on the type of residential that's being developed. And I'm not prepared to show you exactly what that number is going to look like, but I will say that it's going to be in the neighborhood of roughly $1,000 to $1,200 a unit for a single family unit, and half that for medium density and about a third of that for high density projects. What it comes out to on a practical per acre basis is roughly 5 to 6. Oh.
While you're waiting to get back, you're saying $10,000 an acre. That is based on the percentage. Prime is worth about $30,000 an acre. We're supposed to be paying 1/3.
I'll explain that. Yep. Okay. So the question was asked that if prime is actually appraising at $30,000 an acre, or a little more than that actually, the LAFCO policy requires 35% of that amount be the amount that you collect as a mitigation. So that's why it's not the full $30,000 an acre. And when I bring to you the final policy that you actually consider and vote on, I'll include the full LAFCO policy, which is very long, so I didn't include it in this agenda, but so that you can look through what their evaluation criteria it is for that. Based on the calculations we've done on a per unit basis, we collect approximately $1.72 million, which is right in the ballpark of our estimate at $10,000 an acre. So we can go to the next slide. So here are the next steps. We complete the blended fee computation and propose a fee and policy for council consideration. One little component I didn't include in here that is something that we'll have to discuss a little bit is whether we consider some type of CPI adjustment and administrative charge. The CPI adjustment is keeping track with the increase in land values, and I haven't quite because it's real estate values are very different than a CPI adjustment, and so we're kind of looking into some different options along those lines. The second component is that if the city is going to administer this program, we, in almost all pass-through agreements where we pass fees through, we typically assess a charge of 1% of whatever the charge is to pay for the finance staff's time and taking that money in and processing checks and keeping the paperwork. We also need to establish a process to assess those fees on building permits and for submitting those fees to the Farmland Trust. We've had those discussions that we're going to have a very simple MOU with the Farmland Trust. And just so the public knows, what happens is when those fees are collected and submitted to the Farmland Trust, they then are charged with going out into agricultural areas in Stanislaus County and attempting to get agricultural easements with those funds. And sometimes they're able actually even to get matching funds from other sources to further that effort. The implementation of the program is applicable to all projects within Crossroads West. And then the question that I'm sure everybody's asking is, well, what about future projects? Our analysis is that because each and every individual area that you develop in has different soil characteristics and different degradations of, or grades rather, of prime soil, that you have to kind of do that individual analysis on a project by project basis. And presumably, if our process is to continue to do things in a master planned way, we'll do that every master plan moving forward. And next slide. Oh, that's it. So if there's any questions or comments, that's sort of the direction that we would like to recommend. And there's a little bit of work left on the on the calculation side, but we wanted to make sure that council is generally comfortable with the idea of how we would like to apply this, because we think it's not only the best way to make sure that we're complying with Policy 22, but also the most fair way to do it when you have projects with multiple landowners and different characteristics of land.
Thank you, Sean. Is there any questions of Sean?
I don't have any questions. Just kind of curious if Central Valley Farmland Trust is maybe with us via Zoom. I doubt it. No, I mean, the presentation, I don't have any questions. I did have questions about the easement process, but I'll save that for another time. Thank you.
I don't have a question per se, but I think it's just a comment that we as a city are going to be the guinea pigs to see how this actually works. So I hope that when we put this together, that it'll be flexible enough so that we can, make changes as necessary.
Definitely. Yeah, and I don't have the specific detail on it, but I can tell you that not all that long ago, the City of Modesto adopted an ag mitigation fee. I think, don't quote me, please, anybody that's listening, I think it was about $4,500 an acre. But they have a very different philosophy because they're going to be using their sewer land where they put water out onto to mitigate some of their requirements. So this is a very different process where we're simply just giving the money up to the Farmland Trust. But yeah, we'll build in some flexibility where we can look at it again, however often the council wants to. Yeah.
Thank you.
And as we move forward, if we have additional annexations, not only would it be, a CPI, but I think it would be market value, depending on if you have a flooded market, the land prices drop. When you have a scarcer commodity, your land prices increase. So it's dependent upon time and it's time and space sensitive. So.
That's correct. And I also just want to mention one other thing. One of the questions we had for LAFCO, or for the executive director of LAFCO, when we kind of were asking what the direction we should go to comply with this was, look, it's really the city's responsibility to determine how the program works and to administer the program. LAFCO sets the policy, and that's it. So it gives council quite a bit of discretion here.
Okay, is there anyone from the public wishing to comment on this item?
There is no one on Zoom wishing to speak, and we did not receive any written comments on this item.
Okay, I'll bring this back for direction, and I believe that you do the blended rate, and then collect the fees and submit it to the Farmland Trust. And that's usually based on each subdivision when you get the fees, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So for each subdivision, like we have 3 in the making, we have 1 already that should be paid, and then the others as they submit their final map.
Yeah, it'll be assessed on the building permit. And so here's, just real quick, this is why I think that's important. If a project stalls halfway through, the market dumps out or something like that, let's say they've built 41 homes. well, they will have paid those ag mitigation fees on at least those 41 homes, and when they pick it up again, then they're subject to it again. So it provides a little bit of flexibility for the developer as well, where they're not paying all of that cost up front before they, some of these projects take a year or two to build, so.
47.
Yeah, and LAFCO did agree to the assessment on the building permit.
Okay. Any other direction? Good?
Were we in agreement with the 1% for staff as well?
I think that as he develops it, we pay the staff through other sources. We're not collecting additional staff, we're not getting additional staff.
Okay.
But that's up to the administration. We're not getting additional staff.
But it's additional work, though?
Well, it's to make sure that,
Still a 40-hour work week.
that's true, it's to make sure that we're not subsidizing this effort in any way. So, but yes, you're right, we're not going to add an additional staff person, although I'm sure Tammy would like that in finance for it.
Sorry, King. Okay, any others? Okay, do you have direction?
Mhm.
Can we move to the
Yep.
next one? Okay, item 10.2, workshop. Project update and implementation steps of Riverbake recycled water and wastewater treatment plan upgrade.
Thank you, Mayor. That's me again. So I'm going to be probably agendizing this for discussion, I would say every 60 to 90 days because of the gravity of the project, the expense of the project, and that we're going to have to do about 10 different tasks concurrently to pull it off effectively. So we can go to the next slide. This is so everybody is aware, in December of 2019, we received 2 grants from the Regional Water Quality Control Board for a recycled water study and wastewater treatment master plan. In June, we had the study was completed and submitted to the City Council for approval. In June, after that approval, we submitted that to the Regional Water Quality Control Board for their review. In September, we provided an update on the review process, which at that time and still currently, the plan is in review, and more importantly, implementations for the next step. And then since that time, we have basically been working on fine-tuning what we need to propose to the City Council. Here are the key next steps in order for us to keep the project on track. First, we need to formulate and issue an RFP for CEQA and NEPA analysis of the project. Obviously, it's a required step anyway, but the other component is that almost all of the grants that we're aware of that we would be able to compete for are going to require that this is completed in advance before it's considered. The second is that we need to do the same thing with regard to an RFP, but for a wastewater rate analysis. And just so that no one from the public has a panic attack, this is not as a result of us immediately adjusting rates. This is simply to look at what our rates would need to be under this new system, and they would not be implemented until council determined that it was appropriate, and you're absorbing those new costs. And then it's also usually a prerequisite for any future bond consideration and grant consideration. The reason for let's go back one. The reason for that is that especially with regard to bonding, bondholders want to know that your rates are set in place so that they're going to be paid back eventually for their loan. So it's a requirement. And then finally, in January, we're going to bring you a proposal for preliminary design, which our wastewater consultant is going to work on, which will be a prerequisite for us to get into the construction and engineering documents, probably in April to June of next year. Okay.
Before you leave, when would CEQA NEPA be completed?
So we would like to have the RFP back by like the middle of December and have a recommendation to you in January, which means they get started immediately. And Neil, our wastewater engineer, thinks that it's roughly a 3 to 5 month kind of project. But we'll see what the consultant
going to US EPA or HUD for money is a little bit advanced.
I don't think so. I think that laying the groundwork for those projects, you know, if you happen to be out there during the U.S. Conference of Mayors is important so that they see it when it comes across their desk and they already know about it.
Get a project manager on that side.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any possibility that with the infrastructure bills that have been passed by the federal government, that there might be some money in there that would help us down the road?
Yeah, so I'm gonna answer that now and later as well. But the short answer is yes. Neil, our wastewater engineer, has been sitting in on a number of these sort of updates about this infrastructure bill and what kinds of things it's going to pay for or have grants available for. And water and wastewater is clearly like one of the key components to it. So,
Thank you.
okay, we can go next slide. So upcoming deliverables, we just talked about that. We're going to have to wrap this all into our mid-year budget discussions because there will be costs associated with it. And investments that the City Council is going to have to consider making if we want to keep this project on track. It's kind of like we have to make the investments now if we hope to compete for those funds for the really expensive components of the project later. So that's 1 and 2. 3 is we'll talk about allocation of some funds for preliminary design at mid-year. And then the number 4 is an important one that we haven't spent a lot of time discussing at council, but I think is something that we really need to get into, is to consideration of a contract with a lobbying firm to assist with grant writing and future funding sources for wastewater infrastructure. My experience is, while I don't know that sometimes there's value for a small community to have a lobbyist on retainer all the time, that when you're going after a project that could cost up to $60 million, it's worth the money to invest in folks that have connections in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. and can advocate on your behalf and also can advise you as the best way to access those funds. So working on that, I've talked to one firm and waiting on a response from 2 others, and we'll bring you a recommendation in December. And then I just put this up here because I thought it was a cool drawing that Neil did of the thing. But if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. No technical questions about how it works, though.
I don't have any questions. I understand the process where we're going, and the sooner we get moving on this, the better chance we'll have in receiving funding. And you're right, a consultant or a lobbyist would be perfect. Already have doors open in some of those key departments, federal and state, and easy to walk people right up to the project manager.
And Mayor, the other thing I didn't mention is, obviously we don't know what the responses are going to look like in terms of cost for all these steps we need to take. We think that it's going to be in the probably $400,000 to $500,000 range for all of those things I just mentioned, total. And one of the things that Maricela and I are exploring, because this is a water project, whether ARPA funding can help with some of those efforts. So it may not need to come out of the utility.
Okay, thank you. Is there any, I already asked for public comments, didn't I? Okay, are there any public comments?
There is no one wishing to speak on Zoom, and we did not receive any written comments.
Oh, thank you. All right, are you clear of what we're trying to do? Everybody?
Yes.
All right. Let's move from the workshops to do business. About time we did business. Okay, starting with item 11.1, a resolution to approve the appropriation of an amount not to exceed $50,000 from the general fund reserve to fund the city of Riverbank Centennial events, activities, and materials.
Thank you, Mayor. No major presentation on this evening. We had this discussion a few council meetings back. We've already taken council direction and started the process. We've got Gabby's working on calendars that are being sponsored by a number of our local businesses and nonprofits. We are already got a lot of our promotional materials worked on. We're starting their first event, which will either be in February or March. It'll be the dinner at the community center, the 1920s dinner, I think we're calling it. And and then the long list of additional projects that we have for this coming year. Our estimate is $50,000. I think that we probably come in quite a bit below that, but I'd like to have enough flexibility so that we can make sure we're delivering nice events all the way through next August. And so if you'd like to ask any questions, I'd be happy to answer them, but this is our best estimate. And like I said, we tried to be generous enough that we know we could pull off the events, but many of these we probably will come in under budget on. And it does, and then we are recommending that you take it from your general fund reserve because there's no other funding source for this specific activity.
Do have a question. So how are we going to get the word out to our community that we're having all these events?
So part of what we included in those budgetary figures, even though they're not itemized, is promotional. So for example, if you look at, let's take the upcoming one, the 1920s dinner. Of that amount that we have in there, a portion of it I had estimated for promotional, activities, whether it be like ads in the newspaper or flyers or media on Facebook or, but we're going to make a push because we really want to, depending on the event and the capacity of the event, we want to try to get as many people out to these as possible because each of them have a unique character and a different style. Some, for example, the 1920s dinner, probably not really something you want to bring kids to, but the Founders Day Carnival, great for kids and families. So we'll be targeting those efforts based on whatever the event is. And then also depending on the city council.
Right? But you'll have tickets out?
Yes.
1/5 goes to each council member.
Let's let him handle that.
We mentioned a potential outdoor event. I know we threw around ideas, but I really would like to push for that cycling event because we do have a good group that would take on a lot of that effort.
I would absolutely agree with that. I think it was Councilmember Campbell that mentioned a 5K run. So more outdoor events, the better. We have I think his name is German or Herman Fernandez, who's a professional runner from Riverbank, so we can get him down to maybe even host that event or be a part of that event would be great to see also.
Okay, any other comments?
Looking forward to it, getting started.
All right, anyone from the public wishing to comment on this item?
There is no one wishing to speak on Zoom, and we did not receive any written comments.
Thank you very much. I bring it back to the council for consideration.
I'll make a motion to approve item 11.1.
Second?
We have a motion from the vice mayor to approve item 11.1, a second by Councilmember Hernandez. Roll call, please.
Councilmembers Barbara Martinez,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Hernandez, yes. Vice Mayor Uribe,
Yes.
Mayor Bryan.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
11.2, a resolution approving the suspension of the recruitment process to fill 2021 expired planning commissioner's term due to a COVID-19 state of emergency and appoint the current commissioners to serve 1-year interim appointment expiring December 31st, 2022.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'm going to actually ask Annabelle to give this report, as this is a slightly unusual request, but something we think is reasonable given the pandemic and the situation that we find ourselves in today. And so I'm going to turn it over to her.
Okay. Sorry, I have to manipulate some things here. Okay, so the 2021 Planning Commission recruitment process is conducted by yours truly, your city clerk. And let's see here. As you know, every odd year, we do a recruitment for expired terms of the Planning Commission. And this year, 2021 expired terms, there's a 4-year terms of primary commissioners Steve Link and John Dinan, and the 2-year term expiration of alternate commissioner Ben Rubin. So come January, the new seat terms, the new terms will be for the four-year terms 2022 to 2025 and 2022 to 2023. So the Planning Commissioner recruitment process, staff got together and we discussed this. And due to the COVID-19 pandemic, it has actually been an adverse effect on the terms of the current commissioners and on the recruitment process. The current commissioners, actually, if you saw in the report, they have had to cancel several Planning Commission meetings. And that partly is due because of business items not being able to be brought forth. And our external customers are being affected by COVID-19, which in then turn flows down to us as bringing items for the Planning Commission to consider. Also, the recruitment process, as you may also know, that recruitment processes, even with paid employment positions, are having a great, tremendous impact of getting applicants to apply or qualified applicants. And we're considering in this situation, it's a voluntary seat that we're talking about, and which makes it even harder to get applicants to apply under this situation. So we're recommending that we suspend this recruitment process for 1 year and reappoint the current commissioners for an interim 1-year appointment expiring December 2022. And we believe this is quite beneficial. The recruitment process, if I go through the whole recruitment process, which is time consuming and a great effort and costs the city quite a bit, we may not get applicants. We may just get the same applications from the current commissioners. And also it's beneficial because it will actually give them, the current commissioners, the opportunity to continue to serve on time and service that they lost during these past 2 years. So there again, there's the cost of training and that we would save, and every other cost involved in conducting the recruitment. We did receive letters of interest from all 3 individuals, and they are on file with me. We would go ahead in October of 2022 conduct recruitment to fill the remaining unexpired terms. So that would be the 3 years of the 4-year term and the 1 year of the 2-year term. And in the resolution, I did mention that there would be an option to return this to the City Council should COVID continue to affect us or any other variant out there, or it looks good and we should go ahead and conduct a recruitment in October. So this is solely an interim 1-year reappointment. That's all. We're not going to continue this extension and extension and extension. That's not the way I believe City Council wants to go. So we are recommending that you adopt the resolution approving the suspension of the recruitment process to fill the 2021 expired Planning Commissioner terms due to COVID state of emergency, and to appoint the current commissioners to serve a 1-year interim appointment expiring December 31st of 2022. Do you have any questions? Thank you.
I did a little research on it, and other communities are extending the planning commissioners' terms on this. Some are expanding them just 6 months, some are 18 months, some are years.
Correct.
So I think this is reasonable, coming at some expectation by the end of next year. AB 361 will expire on the 1st of January 23?
2024.
2024, oh. That may be 2020, we do it through 2023. But anyway, and we'll just take it up again.
Yes.
If we need to, if COVID is not, if the threat of COVID has not reduced. Okay? That's my opinion. Did a little research on that. So I'm comfortable with how we're doing it, this methodology. Any other comments or questions from the council?
No, I would be in agreement with you, Mayor. I think they missed quite a few meetings, didn't get the experience, exposure of the business of the planning commission, so I am in agreement.
I think it's a great idea. I know because I've watched how trying to recruit these people throughout the years I've been on the council has been tough. And in lieu of the COVID virus and what's happened, I think it's the best way we can go, just like some of the other cities.
Okay.
Great, thank
Good
you.
job, Annabelle. Is there anyone from the public wishing to speak?
Mayor, there is no one wishing to speak on Zoom, and we did not receive any written comments on this item.
Well, thank you. So I bring it back for the council for consideration.
Make a motion that we accept item 11.2 as so stated.
I will second.
We have a motion to approve by Councilmember Campbell and a second by Councilmember Hernandez. Roll call, please.
Council members Barbara Martinez,
Yes.
Campbell,
Yes.
Hernandez. Yes. Vice Mayor Uribe,
Yes.
Mayor O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, staff, on that one. Thank you, Annabelle.
Thank you.
Item 12.1.
Thank you, Mayor. No major updates this evening, aside from just to remind the community, since I won't get another chance, that on November 27th, after Thanksgiving, we are having our Christmas parade and tree lighting ceremony. It's the first time, I think, in 2 years we've done this because we got rained out in 2019. I'd forgotten that. And then, obviously, we didn't do it last year. So we're looking forward to it. We're scrambling a little to get a lot of submissions and a band, but it's coming together nicely. It should be a lot of fun, and hope that everybody can make it out. And there may even be a city council float, which we're working on, so I'll let you know about that.
Ooh.
Get your waves ready. You know.
Ooh. Any other staff comment? No, you're not going to let them speak?
Well, does anyone else have a staff comment out there? No? Okay.
Okay, Councilmember Hernandez.
I don't have any community updates, but I do want to thank Parks and Rec and the staff for a packed Halloween season and all the events and the array of events. I'm bummed out I missed the pet costume contest. I heard it was good. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Campbell?
Yeah, I'd like to thank all the workers in Parks and Rec and in our and other divisions of the city. I've been around and seen a lot of good things going on that are good, and I think we've got some great workers that do great things here with our workers in our community and our city. Likewise, this is a time of the year where it's holiday season time to help others, and I know Food Sharing needs turkeys to hand out for Thanksgiving, and you can get their address on Facebook because they've got a Facebook app column there. And I'd like to thank all the veterans that served in the wars to keep this country like it is, for the freedoms that we have. And then my heart goes out to the Houston musical event that got out of control and 8 people were suffocated or ran over there, and I hope that we don't see any more like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Barbara Martinez?
I wanted to turn off Salesman. Okay, I wanted to say thank you to our commissioners for their commitment to serve on the Planning Commission. And I was listened to a webinar today, and I was surprised to hear that there are studies right now that are going on for a combination COVID and flu vaccine. This webinar basically talked about how cities need to ensure that they collaborate together to fight the virus collectively. And it was presented by the Institute of Local Government. And on November 20th, we're going to have our toy drive in the city, and it will be at Save Mart from 10 to 4 with the Marines. And there are some local nonprofits that are putting this together: Central Valley Community Resources, Casa del Rio, Valley Improvement Projects, and a few others. And at the toy drive, we plan on having a car show and shine, so everybody can come out and take a look at our cars. We're asking them to, for an entry fee, to bring a new and unwrapped toy. Let's see, and families can sign up to receive toys, which our toy giveaway will be on December the 18th. They can sign up at Casa del Rio. And thank you to all our veterans, and happy Thanksgiving to all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So November 27th, as Sean mentioned, you'll get the opportunity to see the cool city council float, but also that day, don't forget, is Small Business Saturday. So instead of shopping on Amazon, you know, the convenience of a click and receiving it pretty quickly, just consider coming out, supporting the small businesses. You know, it helps their overhead, it helps, you know, keep them in business. So please consider that. I'm still kind of digging through the bipartisan infrastructure deal that was just passed. I'm excited about quite a few items on there. I'll highlight a few. The National Network of Electrical Vehicles, so that's a great opportunity. I know we're trying to get some electrical vehicles here in the city of Riverbank. The huge promise, I don't know how realistic it is, 100% access to high-speed internet to all every resident in America. That's big, and I hope that's true, and I hope they can achieve that goal. And eliminating dangerous lead pipes across the country, and the creation of all the 700,000 plus jobs through investments in the public transit, roads, and bridges. And then I had a request from Councilmember, if that's okay, Chief, if you can give us an update on that fundraising event you had at Coolhan Luke's. That was a great event, great turnout. If you want to just kind of give us some insight on that.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes, we had our fundraising event last Tuesday night at Coolhan Luke's. Our goal was to sell 300 tickets. This year, we actually went over that. We sold 320-ish tickets. So we met and exceeded that, had a great dinner, raised a lot of funds for the Shop with the Cop program. So we're set to move forward with that. And this year, Shop with the Cop will be on Wednesday, December 15th. So we'll make sure we get everybody together, get an invitation out for that. We have the community center set aside for that event that night, and we will bring in the kids in after we buy them essential clothes, and then we'll have a pizza dinner and bring their families in and say thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Chief.
you.
That's all I have. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. The only item I have is that as we're considering the veterans, consider this, that most of them have been at war, and there's still casualties of war. You have a 35% increase in the last couple of years of veterans taking their lives. So those aren't calculated as casualties of war, but they should be considered that. So as you are considering veterans, also take a look at their health, their mental health, because a lot of them will go alone, and then that's the last you'll see of them. With that, that's all I have to say. I've been doing a lot, by the way. I just can't report it. And so we're going to go into closed session, consisting of item 13.1, conference with legal counsel, existing litigation pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 alpha. Name of case, Corson Morgan LLC versus City of Riverbank Local Redevelopment Authority. Santa Claus County Superior Court case number CV 21001556. Item 13.2, conference with real property negotiated, Government Code Section 54956.8. Property 6509 Claus Road, Riverbank, APN 132-048-016. Agency negotiator, City Manager Sean Scully. Property negotiator, Isam Kachel. Under negotiation, price, terms of payment, or both. At this time, anyone from the public may comment on these items for up to 3 minutes before we go into closed session. Is there anyone wishing to speak on closed session items?
There is no one wishing to speak on Zoom, and we did not receive any written comments on these items.
Okay, before we go our next, we'll report back out, don't we? Never mind. We now adjourn to closed session. The Riverbank City Council and, Local Redevelopment Authority meeting is now reconvened. Report out from closed session, item 14.1. For item 13.1, counsel with legal counsel, existing litigation. Direction has been provided to staff. Item 14.2, on item 13.2, conference with real property negotiators. Again, a direction has been provided to staff. Our next meeting will be held on December 14th at 6 p.m. Everyone else have a very happy Thanksgiving, and see you at the Christmas parade.